We could be pro for
God,
games.
Take me to your Xbox and play Fortnite today.
Yeah.
God. We're leaving that in, I guess.
Yeah, we are.
All right, I'm not even gonna do the action thing. Welcome to another episode of the Stray Pixels podcast, which unfortunately is canceling this week's in-person event, but luckily we were able to pull together enough support to have a digital presentation. I am Colin Buchanan. I'm your host as per usual, and I am joined by my co-hosts, my fellow staff writer Nathan Mejia, and our editor-in-chief Bailey C. Mangle. How are you guys doing this week?
You know, I didn't think I was gonna make it through, and then Jeff Keighley came up and said, I'll support your podcast.
Yo, our boy Keely, man. You gotta always count on him.
Yeah, man.
Hashtag not sponsored.
I wish so.
Hashtag Jeff notice me, please.
Jeff, please.
Jeff Senpai.
Love me the way you do. Just love me the way you love Kojima.
Bro, nobody can love anybody the way Jeff loves Kojima.
I know.
Jeff Keighley be like, yo, I just want to let you guys know that I don't support publications that give unnecessarily positive reviews to Battlefield games. Anyway, here's the Noisy Pixel podcast.
Yo, let's go. Azario fucking foaming at the mouth.
Right.
Look,
Nate,
if he's going to throw lazy shade at us.
Yeah, I mean, what's the podcast? All you're seeing is like two guys with a black screen. There's no overlay, not even a Noisy Pixel logo. Where's the branding, Azario?
Come on, Azario. It's kind of cringe around.
So this week we actually got some really big game news to talk about, and we actually got two really big things to talk about, but the biggest of which is something that we probably all saw coming, and that was the complete cancellation of E3 2022.
Yeah.
Which, as stated in the title of this podcast episode, was obviously canceled by facts and logic, as good old Benny Shapiro would say. So we kind of expected this, because even though the pandemic and COVID restrictions are waning right now, we don't know if they're going to continue waning up through June. B, E3 is still an event that draws in a crowd of over 30,000 people. We still don't know if that's safe to attend. And C, E3 last year was a bit of a joke.
It was something, man.
It was something.
So they say that they're going to try and come back next year. I have thoughts about that. But Nate, I want to know what your thoughts about the idea of E3 coming back next year for a full presentation are.
So here's the problem with canceling this year and then going, we're going to hit it hard next year, we're going to come back stronger than ever, is that this is going to encourage most developers to hold their own Nintendo Directs this year.
Which they're already doing.
Which
is part of the point here.
Yeah, which they have already been doing. I mean, Sony pulling out of E3 years prior was the big sign to me that it's on life support. We're just waiting for the doctor to come in and tell us that no, E3 is now brain dead and we have to cry over its dead body. Until its twin brother comes out, which I guess now is going to be Summerfest.
Yeah.
Yes, but Summerfest is not going to have an in-person event because that's way too much overhead to have for an event like this when they're not getting the huge publishers. But anyway, Bailey, are you optimistic for E3 actually happening this year?
Not really. I don't think anybody really gives a shit, to be honest with you. The thing with E3 is that I think the reason people kind of enjoy it is just because of how hype the atmosphere is, back to back to back, just on presentations, but I just don't think there's even a need for it anymore. And if it comes next year, I don't know what's gonna do to really stand out,
That's kind of that is a huge point, and especially now that we're seeing these regular presentations. I want to say the last Nintendo Direct peaked at 800,000 viewers on the YouTube stream. like, at what point do we even like still need to have one big central presentation, especially when like part of E3 used to be like, you know, actual deals and stuff were made between companies, and like they would intermingle and determine things amongst themselves, and now that's not happening. Now it's basically just video game announcements. But I don't know how much longer it can really hold on. And I don't know what is going to happen once it stops holding on, whether we're going to continue to have like E3 window presentations, because I feel like a lot of companies do still like hold their big reveals back for, if not E3, then some kind of presentation around the time of E3. Yeah. So is the beginning of June still going to be as big of a deal every year? But I wanted to take you guys on the highlights of the history of E3.
Oh boy, here we go.
From the beginning to now. This is going to be a speed round. So E3 held its first conference actually in the same place that it still is to this day, which is the Los Angeles Convention Center, in 1995. And the presenters were Nintendo, Sony, and Sega.
Yo,
Sega. Sega does.
Sega do what Nintendo don't. And the funny thing is that attendance at that first event was still pretty consistent with what we've been seeing in the last decade. There were about 50,000 attendees. And the last several in-person events have drawn closer to 70,000, but the 2016 event specifically got about 50,000, and the one the year before it got about 52,000. So it's kind of interesting to note that like that part hasn't really changed. Although it also has a lot to do with like the attendance cap on the convention center, which obviously has a finite amount of space.
Yeah.
So flash forward to 2000. Sega's still around, but this is the first year that Microsoft has a presentation, because now we're getting the Xbox starting to creep in as a major player, even though the console itself didn't really make as many waves as they wanted it to. Obviously, they would become much bigger going forward from there. Sega's last presentation was the year after, in 2001, after they killed the Dreamcast. Like, they didn't really have a need to continue hosting a massive show floor presentation. The highest attendance E3 has ever had. Does anybody have a guess?
Considering that 50 to 60,000, I'd say 100,000.
100,000. That's a.
You want to guess when it was? It was not 100,000. I will tell you what the highest number was. But if you have a Bailey, if you have a guess for the number and the year,
I'm gonna say like 80-ish thousand, somewhere around there. Like maybe like early 2010s, like 2011, 2012. I don't know.
I want to say 2006 myself.
8 is super close. The highest in-person attendance, camera, come on, autofocus. The highest in-person attendance E3 has ever had was in 2005 with 70,000 people. Presumably that is the number of people that the LA Convention Center can possibly hold. And the next year it dropped back down to 60,000. The year after, they actually just had what they called the Media and Business Summit. So it was absolutely not open to the public. It was open to a very select number of trade professionals, and there were only 10,000 people there. The year after, I'm not really sure what happened. Someone can probably find that out. But the year after, even though they returned to the LA Convention Center with their old form factor, supposedly only 5,000 people showed.
Well, that's a lot.
That's weird.
I don't know what happened, because it goes back up to 40,000 the year after. My assumption is that it was still the E3 Media and Business Summit in 2008. I don't know why the attendance number was like cut in half from the previous year, though, when they were going back to the convention center. I'm sure if I dug up an old issue of Game Informer or Nintendo Power, I would be able to figure that out. But 2010 is the first year that we see non-hardware publishers presenting. We got Electronic Arts, Konami, and Ubisoft all had presentations in 2010, and they would basically that same group would continue. So obviously them plus Microsoft, Nintendo, and Sony up through 2013. Konami pulled out as of 2014 as they kind of started to scale down on their major game development. But 2013 was also the first year that Nintendo declined to have a trade show conference and instead held, as I mentioned before, a Nintendo Direct. It did have a presence on the show floor, so they were still there, but they did not go out of their way to have a big like show on the main stage with all the pageantry and all that a lot of these other companies bring out. So that was kind of the beginning of the downfall of E3. 2014, like I said, Konami pulls out. It's the first time that the show has been open to children, assuming they have a guardian with them. And Nintendo actually had a Nintendo Kids Corner panel, which I thought was kind of neat. I'm surprised that they haven't done that more. Although apparently at the time it was mostly open to YouTubers. In 2014. I don't know what that must have looked like. That was such a different time.
Probably Pro Jared and
2015 they introduced the PC gaming show part of the presentation and also bring on Bethesda, Oculus, and Square Enix as presenters. 2016 Electronic Arts did not have an actual presentation at the convention center. They had a separate EA Play event that was the day before, and that's what they've been doing. That's what they were doing for the next several years when they were still a physical event to be had. 2017 was the first show that was open to the public. It almost reached the attendance cap. Apparently, they hit 68,400 people. So close. And there were 15,000 general attendee public passes sold. 2017 had the first Devolver Digital show. This is important. Devolver Digital wins E3 basically every year that they decide to do anything. 2018, the biggest event since 2005, they had 69,200 people. And they also added Atlas, and Sega came back. And then the second big domino, but I think the biggest one so far. So the last in-person show was in 2019. This was the year that Sony pulled out.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
So even though Nintendo still has a presence on the show floor, that means that Microsoft was the only publisher that was still having stage show presentations because they kind of needed to. Microsoft does not really have their own state of play. They've done live stream presentations, but they're not like quite as well branded as Sony and Nintendo's are. And obviously this was still in the days of the Xbox One, which was not the Xbox Series was not revealed at this event. It was revealed at the Game Awards later. So that was really confusing. Then obviously E3 2020 didn't happen, completely called off. There was no in-person or digital event, but it was planned to be the largest event that they had had thus far because Take-Two, Bandai Namco, and Warner Brothers were all set to basically replace Sony as stage show presenters. And then last year we had just the huge live stream blowout that everybody made fun of because of how utterly unnecessary the entire thing was. So there's a couple patterns that emerge here. Basically every time something big pulls out, they very quickly try to fill the hole with smaller presentations. And a lot of the time, those smaller presentations end up getting clowned on. Like something that I remember pretty distinctly in 2018, I want to say it was, Kingdom Hearts 3 got 2 new trailers at E3.
At the Xbox and PlayStation. Xbox.
The one that was shown during the Square Enix presentation had already been shown at the Sony presentation, and then Microsoft got a new one. Kind of a sign that like these companies don't really like they were stepping on each other's toes because there was so much overlap. Whereas before, all these companies would be like, okay, we're going to pay to make these games exclusive, or we're going to have exclusive marketing rights to these games. Now it's kind of a clusterfuck.
Yeah.
And as more companies started getting used to live streams, I think that came with their like a lot of growing pains of its own. The most famous thing that happened at E3 last year was Square Enix taking a full 25 minutes of their live stream just to show off Guardians of the Galaxy.
Guardians, baby.
To an audience that had just been severely burned by Marvel's Avengers.
Avengers, baby.
Yeah.
And overwhelmingly, the atmosphere was.
No, that was. I think that might have been the worst presentation I've had to like sit through.
I don't know. I feel like there's been worse.
Like there's been like objectively worse ones where I've laughed, but like that one was just like,
bro. Have you ever wondered what the underside of Avatar's feet look like?
Oh god, here we go.
But like the big thing with that Square presentation that everybody was really mocking was there was 25 minutes of Guardians of the Galaxy and about 3 seconds of Final Fantasy 16.
Yeah, it was
not
good. It was not good.
So I want to know from you guys if you have any like super distinctive memories of E3 reveals, because I've got a couple of them beyond just the clownery of the Square Enix presentation. Do you mind if I go first? Because I have a feeling that one of mine is going to overlap with Bailey.
I know exactly which one's going to overlap.
Really?
Yeah, I've mentioned this before. So E3 2013 was the year that Kingdom Hearts 3 was formally revealed. It was at the very end of, I want to say, Sony's presentation.
Mm-hmm.
They had and one more thing, like they do at Nintendo Direct, and they showed a teaser trailer, and I cried like a fucking baby for like a solid 20 minutes at just this teaser footage. And I can't explain why, because I had pretty recently played Dream Drop Distance. So it's not like I've been waiting the way that we would end up like collectively waiting for the game to actually come out. But it was just like, it was a moment for me. I think that was like the last time I really got super emotional over E3. So Nate, you're up.
So funny enough, that's the one I'm thinking of. That's the one where you see Sorrow at the Heartless, right? The Heartless
in Twilight Town
tornado.
Yeah.
In Twilight Town. Yep. So you say,
I want to say it's actually the one where he pulls
so it's the same trailer.
Yeah,
okay. I couldn't remember if I do remember the tower. So but I couldn't remember if that was in a different trailer.
Funny enough, I now have to pull out a different memory because that was mine as well.
We're all gonna see Kingdom Hearts.
I'm the host. I get dibs.
Everybody forgets I'm a Kingdom Hearts fan. I feel like, despite me being able to randomly quote it.
You play JRPGs, Nate? I thought you just like FPS games.
Yeah, it's all I play is FPS. I play Fortnite. What more do you want?
The no build? The no build?
Okay, honestly, that is a good build, but that's getting a little sidetracked. My next one will actually be a game that I was severely hyped for afterwards. Well, I think it was in 2017, with Takumi Nakamura revealing Ghostwire Tokyo.
Yo!
Oh my god!
It's relevant.
She became a meme instantly. Everyone's new favorite developer.
Yes. And then what's even best about that is that she quit Bethesda and now she's made her own company.
Yep.
I'm so excited for her. Yes.
Good for her.
But yeah, I just remember that one, and I remember it because that was one of the times I'm actually very sad E3 is dying, because even though it's like, oh, it's useless doing it, I made a lot of family memories, and that's one of the ones I really kind of cherish, because it's one of the few ones where me, a group of friends, and my mom all sat around watching E3, and we all just kind of like, oh, this looks badass, and
bunch of fucking nerds.
Yeah, go figure. I'm a nerd.
Really?
Oh, Nathan's a nerd. Oh no.
You got a
All
stormtrooper.
right, Bailey, you're up.
I do.
Well, since you both stole KH3, so like I kind of have two-ish types. So like during that same event, like in 2013, I distinctly remember. So I was in school, I believe, while the event was happening. Like I came back home and I saw like the text for KH3, but then there's also the Versus 13 trailer that played up like right before the KH3 one that revealed itself to be 15. And I was like, I was so hyped for that game. Just like like I kind of followed it. Like, so that game was announced, like Versus 13 was announced when I was in like elementary school. And I vaguely followed it since it was first announced, and it was just a wild ride. Like I think I have more memories of following that game's promotion than I do with KH3. And that trailer where it became 15 was like, holy shit, this is like far bigger than I thought it was going to be. I didn't like how the game like turned out, but you know, good memory.
We're getting the do-over. It's fine.
Yeah, we're getting two.
Yeah.
Okay. So it didn't get like the emotional rise out of me that KH3 did, but I think that my favorite E3 memory of all time was the 2013 event. And it's a double whammy. So the 2013 event, Microsoft walks out on stage and introduces their new console, the Xbox One.
Let's go.
The Xbox One, for those of you that don't know, was originally priced at $500 because you were forced to buy the new and improved Kinect 2.0 with it. They said that the console could not function without it. They also said that the console would be always online, mandatory, could not work otherwise. They extensively talked much more about its potential use as a set-top box for TV and streaming over its use for gaming. Said that the DRM would prevent people from being able to just lend games to their friends if they had physical copies. And Sony, I have to imagine that this was done like in a rush that very night, because Sony's presentation wasn't until the next day. And I'm not really a Sony fanboy, like a stan anymore, but this moment was what probably originally made me one. They walk out and they're like, okay, so PS4 is going to be $400.
Get fucked.
And here is the extremely complicated process through which you can lend games to your friends. And I want to say, like, the executives walk out on stage and one of them's holding a PS4 game case and he just hands it to the other guy.
I remember this.
It was like, this was maybe the most legendary dunk in E3 history. I don't think anyone has ever been, and like, this is after Sony had their really terrible PS3 reveal presentation where they announced that it would cost way too much fucking money. They came in and like so thoroughly redeemed themselves by just utterly annihilating Microsoft. This was the moment that lost the Xbox One the console war. Period. Yeah. I will not hear any argument to the contrary.
You're right.
Yeah.
It was doomed. It was done. There was no fixing this.
I remember that very vividly. It was really fucking incredible.
Yeah, I remember losing my shit at that, where I was just howling on the floor. But it was the promotions afterwards where they get to that and just Yoshida going, "Here you go." Guy turns to the camera, looks at it, smiles, "Thanks." It's like, oh my god.
They must have watched that Xbox presentation and been like, "Let's just do this."
Like in the like staying up late into the night, re-editing and rewriting and re-rigging this presentation.
Yeah.
Because like, why wouldn't you?
I know, yeah.
Yeah.
And now here we are in 2022. The 8th generation is over, and the Xbox One was thrashed. There are twice as many PlayStation 4 units sold
Jesus.
as Xbox Ones. Twice as many.
That's insane, actually.
Yeah. Xbox started picking itself back up near the end, but it was not enough. Game Pass, I think, was a big factor in it.
It's kind of only Game Pass, to be honest with
Yeah.
My stance on Game Pass to this day, and their huge focus on backwards compatibility, was just a move of desperation trying to regain market share because they had no games at the time.
Mm-hmm.
That is why all of these acquisitions are happening now, is because like Microsoft spent the entire 8th generation basically with its head up its ass. Like they had nothing to release. That's why they could be like, oh, we're going to ship everything day and date, because they only had a first party title of any kind really coming out like every 6 to 8 months.
Yeah.
It was barren.
God, that was a wild time.
They're like, hey, look, you can play all your old games. Please don't think about the fact that there's not any new games.
Yeah, you guys want to play Fallout 3 on my Xbox One?
And look at us now.
This was a moment that rippled forward in time.
Yeah.
Right here.
Oh boy.
And it's weird now, but because of Game Pass, Microsoft's got that market share back because everybody's like, oh my God, Game Pass. And Sony is catching up a little bit.
So we're going to talk about this obviously. In the second half, but we don't know what the Xbox Series market share is, because Microsoft is still playing quiet with sales numbers, which they started doing last generation once it became clear that the Xbox One was being outsold 2-1, and that wasn't going to stop happening. I believe most market analysts still have the PS5 pretty handily beating it. We will see if that continues to happen once like Bethesda games start coming out. But
that's gonna be the big like changer there.
The big factor.
Because Call of Duty is still coming to PlayStation. They've confirmed this. So that would have been the big power move that would have swayed it the other direction. But the inertia of an E3 presentation that happened 10 years ago is still affecting the market to this day.
Yeah.
Because that was what Microsoft wanted the Xbox One to be, was a pricey machine that was always watching you, was always online, and was a DRM nightmare.
Yeah. It was the one, Colin.
It was the one.
God, what a stupid name. What a stupid name.
Yeah, like
that's what they wanted you to call it. They wanted everybody to I got the one.
It's kind of funny to me because I feel like Japanese games and like companies have like a reputation for coming up with really like weird out of the box names, but it's Microsoft that's been the one.
The very first thing that I said as an electronics retailer when the Xbox Series X and S were officially announced was, cool, this is a marketing nightmare.
Yeah,
because you're using this branding when you still have consoles on the shelves that also have the S and X branding. So now when mom who's never played a video game in her life comes in to get a Christmas present for her kid, how the hell is she going to know which one to get, as opposed to the PS5, which is just the one with the disc drive and the one without the disc drive?
Yeah. And not only that, like I know people who are in the know who were getting confused because I think people were buying Xbox One, Series X, and Series S's. Oh yeah, so
I didn't know when. So like I was confused for a while too because I thought the One X was like the X. I was like, wait, what? They're separate.
It also it did not escape my notice. This is we're going on a tangent while I'm giving Nate some time to come up with another example. But it did not escape my notice that if you spell out the initials of Xbox One X, because in the official branding the B is also capitalized, it spells XBOX.
Okay.
So it's a console named after itself.
That's kind of meta.
Okay, Nate, do you have another one?
So after that one, there's a couple. I think the one everybody's going to point to, I think, was in 2012. No, it had to be later, but it was with when Kojima came out and goes, "Well, boys, I've got a game for you."
I think that was 2015
Was it 2015?
or 14. I think.
Oh boy.
And it was, of course,
Way
when
then.
PT came out.
Oh my god.
So just recently, right?
Yeah.
So I was watching this. So there's a series on YouTube that I found called Lore Dump, and so this guy explaining like this these games to someone else.
I think I know what you're talking about.
And he reached like this whole thing about Kojima and like Blue Box and Konami, blah blah. And I wasn't aware of this whole thing with PT, but like the amount of fucking balls Kojima has, bro. Like I can't even imagine how the hell this got through the presentation. I can't even imagine.
Yeah, because for context for people is that Kojima just came out and said it's coming out, and Konami, everyone what? And Konami went what? Because Silent Hills had already been canceled when he announced PT.
Yeah.
Kojima
Are you
was
sure
already
about that? Oh, like internally, you mean?
internally, yes.
Wasn't it not a thing at all?
They had so this big story is so I've heard is that at that point Kojima had been like up there like a co-CEO or something at the time, and he got demoted and slowly phased out. And they had already greenlit PT at that point, but with how unhappy they were with Metal Gear Solid V, and famously they didn't want him to finish it, or they didn't want him to finish it because of the money and how much thing. Because he would take chunks of music, go, "Oh, this is terrible. Let's go redo that," and just it's gone. So they had got somebody else in, and they had already been like, "Kojima, no, we're not doing this other game. You know, V has to sell this much," and Kojima just kind of did his own thing.
He's insane, man. God.
Yeah. No, he's insane. He also famously went to Platinum and go, "Hey, my developers are shit. They can't finish Metal Gear Rising. Can you finish this?"
What a fucking badass. Holy shit.
Yeah. He's insane.
I gotta see him and Nomura work together one day.
But all right, Bailey, let's finish this out. Let's round us out.
Oh boy. So to be honest with you, I was gonna do a call-in, so what Colin was talking about. But
sniped, double sniped, 360 no scoped.
Double sniped me. Yeah. I think to me the funniest was probably I think it was when it was like it's during that infamous part where I think it was Blizzard who were doing like the whole like phone thing with Diablo.
Oh, the no phones thing?
Yeah.
No, that was BlizzCon.
That was BlizzCon, yeah.
That was BlizzCon.
Yeah.
Do you guys not have phones?
Yeah.
No, that was BlizzCon. The game's still not out. It's been 4 years and the game's still not out.
Oh god.
Game's never coming out. It's like just like oh god, I forgot the name of the game.
Oh no, Nathan's forgetting.
I forgot Overwatch's name for a second. Oh,
are you okay, Nate?
Yeah.
Okay, we will get into the devolution of Blizzard in a later episode. That's a whole episode easily. But Nate, it sounded like you still had at least one more that you think you're thinking about.
The other thing I was thinking about is yes, and it was kind of funny. It was around the time Nintendo was doing a lot of the health stuff in the Wii era, and particularly the vitality sensor.
I knew exactly what you were talking about.
Oh, I forgot about that. Oh,
goes on your stupid finger.
It looks
why? Who knows?
And I remember sitting there going, "Huh? What would that be used for?"
Like,
it's a copyright
gonzo idea.
It's copyright.
Nintendo was really just throwing stuff at the wall, being like, "You guys like the Wii? We don't understand why. Here, have this. Here, have this. Here, have this."
Yo, the wheel though, that was kind of hot.
The Wii wheel.
The wheel is
You know?
kind of
It was
hard.
literally just a plastic shell.
No, you have to make sure on your game box this is compatible with WiiWheel.
Oh my god. I'm going to wrap up the first half of this episode before we get to a cringier joke that makes me want to die, which is our typical pattern. So we will be right back. In the second half of the episode, we're going to talk about the big Spartacus reveal that turned out to not be quite as big as really I think anyone was expecting. But what did we get right? What did we get wrong? What are we still hoping for? Find out after the break. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. So the second half of the episode this week is going to be sort of a follow-up to our first ever episode, actually, where we pretty extensively discussed our predictions for what was formerly known as PlayStation Spartacus and is now just known as PlayStation Plus. So the reveal happened. In case you missed it, Sony announced a revamp of the PlayStation Plus and PlayStation Now services. The title, it's all just getting folded into the branding of PlayStation Plus. So effectively, we still have the same first tier as we have now. So the first tier is called PlayStation Plus Essential. It's going to include monthly downloadable games, exclusive discounts, cloud storage, and online multiplayer access. And it's still going to be the same $9.99 per month or $60 a year as it always was. The second tier is PlayStation Plus Extra, which appears to basically be combining PlayStation Plus as we know it already with specifically the downloadable catalog of PlayStation Now. So that's going to be all the PlayStation 4 and eventually PlayStation 5 games that you can download and natively play on your console. And then the last one is PlayStation Plus Premium. This one's going to be $18 a month or $120 yearly. Sorry, I forgot to mention the extra. Extra is going to be $15 a month or $100 yearly. And then Premium is $18 or $120 yearly. And Premium comes with everything from the above tiers, but also the streaming catalog of PlayStation games and a selection. The wording here is somewhat critical. A selection of older games that will be available to effectively download and play on your console through emulation. So this is basically what I think we were all expecting. The PS Now brand was pretty weak since its introduction. Because it was so heavily positioned initially as Sony's game streaming system. And like we said, the game streaming part of that didn't really function to the degree that it was playable for a lot of people. And despite the fact that PS Now did go on to have like a fairly robust selection of downloadable titles, just like Game Pass has, it kind of never got that stink of what they were going for in the early days off of it. So this makes a lot of sense. And it makes sense to keep the PS Plus branding because PS Plus already has so many subscribers. And if you basically just tell them, oh yeah, you're just going to keep subscribing to PS Plus, it makes sense. Mm-hmm. We were correct, as was basically everybody else that was in any kind of know that Sony is going to continue not putting out day and date first party games. Every once in a while we'll see day and date third party games like we recently saw for Shadow Warrior 3. But at least not anytime in the near future, we are not looking at a service where you will be able to pay a monthly fee and get instant access to, say, God of War Ragnarok on launch day. So, what did you guys think of the news?
So, like, I think it's a bit too contrived. So, I don't think the extra tier is really necessary, to be honest with you. So like I think the ideal thing to like that they should have done here was to package the extra stuff into the base subscription, because it's not even offering that much in the grand scheme of things. And then make the premium one like the 90 or whatever like a year. Because that's what, because like the jump in like what you get from extra to premium is like so freaking vast, in like the library of what you get that I don't really understand the meaning of that tier.
No, I disagree. I disagree because so
Mhm.
extra comes with like they say up to here's the crucial wording, but up to 400 of the downloadable PS4 and PS5 games. So like we said before, thing we have to remember is older titles and backwards compatibility are a niche feature. They are not something that is appealing to the vast majority of the player base, no matter how badly dedicated fans want them. So I think that having the extra tier effectively be a price cut for that sect of PS Now means that people that just want to play the newer games can do that without feeling like they're being forced to pay for, you know, all of the older stuff, all of the PS3 games. Like it's not going to be like a, you know, a situation where you have to buy like a bundle of channels from your cable provider, even though you don't want most of what you have. I think that this model makes the most sense because the people that want the most are going to be the minority that are up to pay for the most premium tier in the long run. Side note, I don't know if we put up a headline on this, but it's been going around Twitter all day on the day that we're recording this. So existing PS Plus memberships that are just PS Plus by themselves are just going to get converted into PlayStation Plus Essential, but PS Now memberships that don't have Plus attached, once the rebrand rolls out sometime around June, July, will be converted into PlayStation Plus Premium membership time.
That's
if you want to, you can go start stacking up PS Now subscriptions. There's no cap. You can buy several years worth of it.
I might do that.
And get a good couple years of this service.
That's insane, really.
That is insane, yeah.
So Nate, did you have any initial reactions before we move on?
Yeah, my initial reaction was, that's the price point, really? And you know, because seeing from my point of view is I was automatically always going to go to the highest tier up. I'm that kind of guy. So thinking about, wow, they're doubling this because of PS Now, which, looking back on it, once I stepped back and was rationally thinking about, yeah, it's as if I was subscribing to both at the same time, which is fair. But at the same time, I thought there would be a little bit of a price decrease, like say, like not like too extravagant, but somewhere like it'd be like $100 for both.
I think 120 is like the biggest gripe that people have.
Yeah.
It's just...
But I think that so I think that that's kind of like diminished by looking at it's still not as expensive as Game Pass Ultimate is.
That's a good point. I did think about that. You're right. Yeah.
And you know, especially if you take advantage of what you can do right now and start stacking up your membership. But like even in the future, when it comes to paying for like paying the sticker price for this service, I think that the price is honestly pretty right, especially when you consider like for a lot of these games, the older games, which I think the big assumption is what we're going to see first is all of the PS1 and PS2 classics that were available on the PlayStation 3 digitally. A lot of those games are not legally obtainable anymore on modern consoles. So I think that like paying that price to play hopefully decent versions of these games with the modern controller, we're all really hoping right now that this isn't going to be like the PS Classic, where like half of the titles were the inferior versions for reasons no one could really figure out. But the wording that was used specifically is what's kind of got a bunch of people confused, because in PS Plus Extra, they specified that it adds a catalog of up to 400 of the most enjoyable PS4 and PS5 games. And then for Extra, it was up to 340 additional games. So we don't know if that language means that it's going to be a one in, one out system once it hits those caps on both of them, or if this is just the value proposition at launch, because we also don't know if they're going to continue adding new games at the same clip that they do currently, or if there's going to be like a greater volume because we're now adding from a greater diversity of platforms.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Nobody knows.
So the big news obviously is also PSP titles being playable on home consoles. That's really cool. We didn't have that before. But there has also been no word on trophy support, which I think we're all expecting is not going to happen.
No.
So Sony did create a patent several years ago for technology that would allow you to basically add trophy support on top of an older game by creating a system that would basically read your save file and cause the trophies to pop up based on flags that had been triggered in a save file rather than like live flags that were triggering in real time.
Yeah.
But that was not for this. That was for the library of PlayStation 2 games that were ported to the PlayStation 4 before this. That was not for this specific library. It would be really cool. I would love to eat my words on this one because I think that would be a thing that would get a lot more people interested in these older games, but it also sounds like it would be a pretty massive undertaking to add a trophy support for 300
way too many games. It's way too many for them to do it. I don't think so.
Yeah, it's way too many.
And then obviously the other big deal is confirmed we are not getting native PlayStation 3 support, which again, I think we all knew. It is just not worth the price to Sony. And I don't blame them. Again, I don't blame them either. Wanting to play PlayStation 3 games is an extremely niche desire in terms of their install base. Like financially, it just doesn't make sense for them to put in that level of investment. Whereas Xbox basically had to, in order to retain any of their player base. And it was much easier because I would say that porting an Xbox 360 game to the Xbox One takes maybe 20% of the effort as porting a PlayStation 3 game to the PS4.
It's kind of like when you're online on these like forums like Twitter or wherever else, like it's really easy to like for some people to like kind of take the general assessment you see on those like online platforms as what the majority wants, when like when in reality people don't really give a shit about
for sure.
It's like looking at Twitter and thinking that you can predict like political elections and you don't take into account like just how small the percentage of people in America like that are on Twitter is. It kind of skews your viewpoint in terms of looking at the greater picture, because you're seeing thousands of people saying they want this, but those are thousands of people in a pool of tens of millions. And that's just kind of where we're at.
And not only that is I'm still struggling to think of games that are on the PS3 that you couldn't play elsewhere anyways.
The ones that come to mind right away are the Tales games. So Tales of Xillia, Tales of Xillia 2, Tales of Graces F, the Symphonia duology. But that's kind of, and I guess Infamous 1 and 2.
Infamous.
But I think it's kind of, there's more, but I just can't really think of any that I care about. I guess the Disgaea collection, there's a really big Disgaea pack on PS3.
I guess, but like
even then it's like, you know.
I think they recently released Disgaea, quite a few Disgaea games on PC. So it's just kind of like one of those things like, well, you can play it on PC, or this got remastered. Like Uncharted got lifted for years.
There's just not many games that are worth it.
I do think that the sort of blind spot in this entire thing is not so much the PS3 games, but the couple of Vita games that are still exclusives. And some of them like there is a reason, and that reason is the unique functionality of the Vita that is not easy to translate. But I do think that it's easier than it's ever been because of how robust the DualSense touchpad is.
Yeah.
I think that it would be possible. It'd take a little bit of work, but I think it would be possible to port games like Uncharted Golden Abyss. There's also still no other console versions of Persona 4 Golden. Tales of Hearts R is still a Vita exclusive.
Oh, Tales of Hearts R, man, I forgot about that game. Fuck.
So that kind of blows, but also 80% of the important library of the Vita has eventually made its way elsewhere. So I don't blame them for not quite looking in as hard, especially since Sony continues to try to pretend basically that the Vita never happened.
You know, I don't blame them.
The Vita didn't mean life. Never did.
Never did.
So I want to ask both of you, is there anything that you were realistically expecting that you either don't know yet or has straight up been confirmed to not be happening here?
I think I think anybody that was expecting native PS3 support was just kind of lying to themselves. I just think it's too idealistic. I don't know. Like, it's just it would have. I don't know. Like, because that was
it would be cool, but it's not gonna happen.
But like, because that was the one thing I saw people like talk about was the PS3 native support. But if it didn't happen now, like if it hasn't happened by now, I don't see why it would happen now. Sounds the effort.
Native PS3 support and day one first party titles are just white whales for Sony people.
The day one stuff is just kind of like, I kind of almost find it like kind of like, I don't know if disgusting is the right word, but like I find it kind of like gross in a way.
Are you talking about the attitude of the people that are yelling about it?
Just like the day one.
I believe
stuff.
the word you're looking for is entitled.
Entitled, yes. It's just kind of like, I think
agree.
Xbox is in a very unique position to do that, and expecting that here is a little weird.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like, for a quick recap, the reason why Sony's not doing that is because Xbox for Microsoft is a loss leader. The entire Xbox division is a loss leader. Game Pass is basically bleeding money because they are really hoping that it pays off in the long run. But the problem is that Game Pass basically needs to have way more subscribers than there are Xboxes out in the wild in order to become profitable. And that's why it's reaching the PC market and the mobile market.
Yeah.
Sony is aiming to be sustainable all by itself because PlayStation is the number one moneymaker for Sony as a company. So it can't look at losing money in the short term to make money in the long term. It has to be making money right now, and it is. So there's no reason for them to put their day one games on a subscription service. And that is also why they're leading the charge on a $70 price tag for 9th generation console titles. Like, it kind of sucks for the consumers, but speaking as someone who, you know, is part consumer, but part journalist at this point, I think that it's healthier for the industry that these games are continuing to be sold a la carte rather than on demand.
Yeah, exactly. And with it, the common console war thing, I can't believe that I'm sitting here going back and looking at a new console war. Like it never left. Like, I feel like I'm back in 2008.
It never leaves it.
I guess not. You know, people say, "Oh, Sony has no money," and it's like, no, Sony has business sense enough to know that, hey, this isn't going to be sustainable, and B, they would have to really screw over their developers in some ways.
Yeah.
If it's not in money, it's going to be in work hours.
And like, it seems so far like the acquisitions that Sony has made, they've been treating these people really well. Like for a lot of these companies, they're companies that they've been working with like very closely for years. Companies like Firesprite, like Blue Point, where there's already basically a partnership, and they just want them to keep to really be on the home team. And Bungie, they bought, and then they're just letting them basically continue doing exactly what they were already doing. They want Bungie for their talent because they want to have their own like big multiplayer live service games the way that Xbox has, because it's really the one thing that they're missing that Xbox has aside from day one games on a subscription service. But it's a matter of like keeping the industry healthy, because Sony does not have a giant Scrooge McDuck pool of money that they can swim around in and just throw all over the place. This is their bottom line. They have to maintain this, and they're doing a good job of it. Like, I would honestly say that the Sony approach, probably from a business perspective, is the better one. Yes, it's more consumer friendly to offer these games immediately, but as I said before, I think that it just is swelling and inflating the bubble that's going to pop eventually, and we're going to start seeing layoffs in these Microsoft bought companies. And I think that the ones that Sony are buying are in healthier positions, especially since Sony is quite frankly overpaying for some of them. I think that that's like a pretty solid sign of good faith.
That is true. And I think people are also thinking like, oh, that means God of War Ragnarok will never come by. No, I suspect it'll come 6 to 7 months.
Yeah, just like give it time, you know?
Yeah, like 6 months, 7 months after release. Because let's face it, if you're already on the fence for God of War at Ragnarok, you playing it for free wasn't going to make you go, oh, you know what? I'll buy the game now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's never going to do that. Whereas someone like me, where I might have, well, I probably will buy the game on release because I really like God of War 2018. If it was for free, I might readjust and go, you know what? I probably don't have to buy this because I've already played this. And what's the point of owning what I've already played? And it's not like it'll ever go away because it's a first party title. And that's kind of where I think people don't think about it too much. Or they just think, oh, it has to be like this. It's going to be mine. You know, Xbox is better. That kind of attitude.
And like, you know, this is all not even getting into what we already discussed, where Game Pass is diminishing the concept of ownership over your content. Like, no, you don't literally own the game that you're playing. You own a license to play it, but having a disc on hand, like having a copy that you can go re-download, even if you're not paying a subscription cost, that's kind of crucial. And I think that Sony are the only ones that are really still trying to champion that, aside from, and I've even mentioned this about Nintendo actually, where, you know, they're also locking a bunch of stuff behind subscription paywalls. And it really sucks that all of these retro games that Sony is going to offer on PlayStation Plus Premium aren't going to be purchasable a la carte from what we can tell. It would be really neat if they did that, but I would also then expect them to make me rebuy all the games that I bought on PS3. So double-edged sword there, but I would probably do it.
They're like those games were all pretty cheap anyway, like from what I recall.
But it's still putting like the long-term effects on the customer, I think, higher in their priority list than Microsoft is. Because Microsoft just effectively wants you to you know, get Game Pass and then just keep paying for it forever.
That's their fucking strategy. Just spam Game Pass.
Yeah. Game Pass day one, and like Game Pass is weird because I have it.
It's just I think we talked about it, but just I think Game Pass is just like, to me anyway, it's just really overwhelming. And then
there's so many options.
There's just I just don't know like how to like even feasibly tackle what's on there. You know, it's kind of like.
And there is a bit of a deep value when you look at it. And I'm not talking like it is always 50,000 games, because it really doesn't. But from a perception point of view, you look at them and you're like, there's so many, choose what's going to get me to play this game over this game, besides your friends telling you, play this one, dude, play that one, dude.
And people forget like just how expansive the actual competing PS4, PS5 library on PS Now like was and will probably continue to be. Like, there is a lot on there, and it is unfortunate that it tends to, like, the big names tend to stick around for a very limited period of time. Usually they'll only be there for like 3 months, but there's a lot of stuff in that back catalog that a lot of people didn't get the chance to play the first time. There's a lot of really good indies. There's a lot of really good AAA games, and frankly, it's worth a look if you never have before. Especially now that you can see in the PlayStation Store, you can see which games are included in PS Now right on the store page. It's surprising to me how often I will go to buy something that's on sale and it'll say, "Oh, it's included with PS Now."
Yeah, that is fair.
But I think that this is like both about what we expected, and also I'm going to remain optimistic that it's a good thing. I think that, the price being basically what anybody that was already paying for both services already had is pretty cool. The only thing that I maybe would have added would have been in the premium tier. I would have added a Crunchyroll subscription.
That would have been really smart, actually. That would have been really fucking smart.
And we might get into this next week. We've just kind of been too busy to talk about the big news with Crunchyroll, but I think that now was kind of the time if they were going to roll Crunchyroll into a PlayStation service of some kind. Now they just did their big rebrand, re-reveal. So that's kind of a shame. I was really hoping for some closer integration there.
How much is Crunchyroll?
The base subscription is $8 a month. The next level up is 10. I believe the one above that is 14.
Something like that.
And obviously you get more features as you go up. I believe that the $10 a month one, which is the one that I have, is the one that enables multiple streams and offline downloads, which is why I have it, because I get on planes.
Yes.
I think they could have provided the lowest tier on PS.
I agree. I fully agree. I think that because imagine, so there are about 5 million paying Crunchyroll subscribers. Imagine how many PS Plus subscribers could have been convinced to roll Crunchyroll into a new Crunchyroll membership into their PS Plus subscription once this rebrand happens. Just a thought. They got to make Crunchyroll look as good as they possibly can, because they paid $1.1 billion cash for it.
Sony's all about the anime, man.
Yeah, man.
I mean, they own a production company and a distribution company.
I always forget they own Crunchyroll.
They own, because they already owned A1 Pictures and Aniplex.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And then Funimation before that. After that,
back together, baby.
It's actually very worrying for the anime industry here.
Again, we'll talk about it. This is not that episode.
It's not that episode, but it's not exactly a good thing.
But do you guys have any closing thoughts on Spartacus?
Yeah, I
what
think
it ultimately ended up being.
I think with Spartacus, I think we were all pretty jaded about what it could be. Rather, maybe not jaded, but realistic. That's why nothing came out of the blue for us. This is what we expected. I think there is value that it's focusing so much on older titles, PS2, PS3, and PS1, because we lost all those games. Oh, and PSP. I forgot about PSP, because we lost all those access to all of those games once we get to PS4 and then to PS5. So at least having this will ensure whenever and whatever PS6 ends up being, we'll at least have those games still, because they're not going to take them away through a subscription service or a streaming service. But at least that's good. Otherwise, we'll have to wait and see, and hopefully the whatever expanded list is going to be great, and who knows, maybe we'll all fall in love with it.
Maybe.
Bailey, how about you?
I mean, I think the biggest question people now have is just the library of what to expect. Like, I think that's gonna be the biggest factor for if people buy the tier. Like, because I've been seeing people talk about like, oh, if they have Crisis Core on there, I'm gonna get the max tier, right? Like, and that's kind of where I am at too. Like, because I want to support these games officially, right? Like, while we could just like emulate them, the option to actually have a lot of these games officially available is really enticing.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of just seeing what they have in store, Like, is it going to be all just like rolled out at once? Is it going to be like a Nintendo thing where it's like every few months they like drop some more or what,
Yeah.
So
I'm really hoping that we continue to get new games monthly for the PS4 and the PS5 tier, and then maybe every 2 or 3 months we get new games in the classic library, just because I imagine those are more complicated to license. But I do want to see them keep it up, because we talked about this, one of my major criticisms of Nintendo Switch Online is the absolutely glacial pace at which they add
really
games.
Bad. It's really bad. Yeah.
So it's not going to be hard to look better than them. I hope that they put in the effort to do so. But so that is going to wrap it up for another episode of the Stray Pixels podcast. We post every Tuesday on your podcast app of choice and right here on the Noisy Pixel YouTube channel. I want to know from you guys, what did you guys expect out of Spartacus? Did you have any predictions that you guessed lucky on? Anything that you're really disappointed that didn't end up being part of the service? Let us know in the comments on YouTube or tell us on Twitter. You can find me, Colin, at the Arcane Ranger. You can find Nate at Less Than Nathan, and you can find Bailey at Orpheus Joshua, or the site itself at Noisy Pixel News. The Stray Pixels podcast is brought to you by NoisyPixel.net. Noisy Pixel is run by a group of gamers who work hard to bring you the latest news, reviews, previews, podcasts, and more. Please like, subscribe, and follow to keep up with our future content, and we will see you guys next week.
See ya.